Hello everyone, welcome to TBR's webinar, Wi-Fi First Market Update with TBR's Senior Analyst, Chris Antlitz. I'm Justin Surgent and I'm hosting today's session. Wi-Fi First, which is a mobile access technology that uses unlicensed spectrum, is becoming a viable alternative to traditional cellular services by not only offering data but also voice and text services. The prevalence of hotspots in residential and commercial buildings as well as public venues is making Wi-Fi coverage nearly ubiquitous across large swaths of urban and suburban areas. A new breed of operators emerging to capitalize on Wi-Fi, including cable operators, startups such as Republic Wireless, and internet companies such as Google. Wi-Fi operators pose a significant challenge to incumbent telecom operators because the cost to use Wi-Fi is relatively low and the quality of service has been greatly enhanced due to innovations in handover technology and seamless authentication. In many cases, Wi-Fi is offered for free, with the cost subsidized by new business models such as analytics and advertising, which is extremely disruptive to telcos. Incumbent operators and network suppliers need to take notice of this disruptive force in the telecom industry and adapt to stay competitive. In today's webinar, Chris will talk on the perspectives and insights found in TBR's Wi-Fi First and Alternative Network Providers Market Landscape reports. To learn more about these reports, please reach out to myself or Chris after the presentation. Now, before we begin, there are a few housekeeping items I'd like to cover. First, we will be recording today's session and posting it on our YouTube site, TBRI channel. We encourage you to visit our channel and watch this presentation or any of the others we've posted. Second, as I previously mentioned, the analysts will accept questions from the audience. Please send them to the Q&A function and we will address them at the end of the presentation. Finally, we will send out the slides as well as a link to the recording of today's presentation to everyone registered for today's webinar within 24 hours of the conclusion of the presentation. Please feel free to view our previous webinars on YouTube and SlideShare as well. I will send the links to these pages in the chat function. Now let me introduce the analyst presenting today. Chris Antlitz is a senior analyst in TBR's telecom practice. He leverages his 7 years of analytical experience to provide critical insight and analysis in syndicated and project work. Chris is the lead author of TBR's Wi-Fi First and Alternative Network Provider Market Forecasts, or Landscapes, sorry. And with that, let me hand this over to...
Thanks, Justin, and welcome everyone. So before we jump into the material, I just want to give some background about what we do here at TBR and how we're getting to this level of research. This chart here is the telecom practice portfolio. It just shows the different areas within the broader telecom market that my group focuses on. So we cover in depth the telecom vendor landscape, telecom operators on a global basis, and now we also are doing some deep dives into some more popular topics that are hitting the market. And some of those include NFV, small cells, 5G, and this topic, this term we've created called alternative network providers. Hope you guys were able to join us on the previous webinar I had a few months ago where we talked about alternative network providers more broadly. In this particular webinar, we're going to be talking about Wi-Fi operators, which is a subset of the broader alternative network provider space. So a little bit about these market landscapes. They include key findings. We do market sizing, customer adoption studies, operator positioning and strategies, what's going on in geos, vendor positioning and strategies, and we also look at M&A opportunities in these spaces. So this is just a context of some of the types of research that we're going to be showing you today as it pertains to the Wi-Fi market. Before we jump into the material, I want to have a level set on definitions here so that we're all speaking the same language. The Wi-Fi market is growing. It's a dynamic market. There is new terms emerging as the ecosystem develops. So I just want to have a level set here on what some of those are that we'll be talking about today. Wi-Fi in general, it's a wireless networking technology that utilizes unlicensed spectrum. A Wi-Fi operator is a service provider that provides access to a Wi-Fi network to its subscribers. They can either own the Wi-Fi network, or they can lease the Wi-Fi network, or they can have they can provide the software layer that works over a Wi-Fi network to enable communication services over that network. So that's a Wi-Fi operator. It can be a broad, it casts a broad net on who would be considered a Wi-Fi operator. And we'll talk more about that as we get into the presentation. Wi-Fi first. This is a term that's becoming more frequently used in the market. Essentially what it is prioritizing the use of Wi-Fi for voice, text, and data. And it uses cellular only as a backup for coverage when the user is not in a Wi-Fi zone. Okay, so Wi-Fi first is have the device always search for and connect to a Wi-Fi network over a cellular network whenever you're in a Wi-Fi coverage zone. And then Wi-Fi only is using Wi-Fi exclusively for voice, text, and data. So no cellular being used here. It's using 100% over Wi-Fi. And Wi-Fi operators, a disruptive force to the traditional telecom business model. That's the basis and premise of this webinar. We're going to be talking about why that is. And we're considering Wi-Fi operators to be alternative network providers because they're aiming to provide network access at a price point that is significantly below current rates being charged in the cellular space. So let's set the stage here. Wi-Fi coverage is pervasive in the U.S., and these networks are being leveraged for significant data offload. This has been going on for quite some time. With when smartphones became introduced and were popularized by the iPhone back in 2007, that really made the Wi-Fi market take off. And I have some stats here, just things to think about how pervasive Wi-Fi already is in our daily lives. I just want to note that this presentation focuses on the United States market exclusively. If you have any questions about the international market, feel free to ask them at the end of the presentation. We're focusing on the U.S. market because it's the most dynamic market for Wi-Fi right now, and we can focus on some of these trends that we're seeing taking place, and some of these things are going to be spilling over into other markets as well. So let's set the stage here. 115 million plus households in the United States. The majority of them have coverage for Wi-Fi already. Most commercial buildings in the U.S. have some Wi-Fi access. Some Tier 1 U.S. cities, I'm going to use New York as an example, have nearly ubiquitous Wi-Fi coverage. Some other Tier 1 cities include Chicago, San Francisco, Dallas, Texas, Boston. There is very pervasive Wi-Fi coverage already endemic in those particular markets, primarily in the urban core. Once you get under the fringes of those cities, the coverage gets a little more sparse. But if you're in the urban core, you can have near seamless, ubiquitous Wi-Fi coverage throughout those cities. Most connected devices already leverage Wi-Fi for connectivity. This includes tablets, e-readers, wearables, and monitors. So things like healthcare monitors, those types of Fitbits, those types of devices. Over 75% of all mobile traffic is generated indoors. Okay, that's a big stat because cellular, its claim to fame is covering outdoor market, okay? You can have coverage if you're in urban, suburban, or rural markets across the U.S. Well, because Wi-Fi is already pervasive indoors, it only makes sense that you should use that technology to do your communication, for your communication needs. Most smartphone subscribers leverage Wi-Fi offload to reduce how much they're drawing off their cellular plan buckets. This has been going on for quite some time, especially with the introduction of smartphones. People using data offload, this is widely used. Most smartphones are Wi-Fi compatible, and you can set your default settings on your devices to leverage the Wi-Fi network, even if you're in a cellular coverage zone. And people will primarily do this to install application updates or to do other data-intensive type drawing off the network, things like video streaming. That's primarily used over Wi-Fi now. Most highly trafficked locations have Wi-Fi. This includes, but is not limited to, hotels, stadiums, subways, airports, and chain restaurants. Now, these different areas will provide Wi-Fi for varying reasons, but the point I'm trying to make here is Wi-Fi is everywhere. It's already here. And what these Wi-Fi operators are doing is leveraging that existing infrastructure to provide access for things like Wi-Fi calling and doing texting over Wi-Fi. This is extremely disruptive to the cellular model. Let's look at those models more in depth and look at the dichotomy between the two of them. So the traditional model is cellular only, okay? It's relatively expensive to build out cellular networks, okay? You have to buy licensed spectrum. We all have seen how expensive licensed spectrum can be. If you look at the recent AWS-3 auction, which took place a few months ago, that auction was almost $45 billion the cellular operators paid for that spectrum. Then they have to build into that spectrum. So they actually have to go out into the field and install radio access base stations, so eNode Bs. They need to install backhaul. They need to install a variety of back-end infrastructure to support that cellular infrastructure in the field. Then there's back office system software that needs to be installed. There's a variety of services that need to be provided to get that infrastructure into the field, optimized and operated and maintained. Okay, this is very expensive to do. Now, if you look at Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi is relatively inexpensive to own and operate. You're leveraging unlicensed spectrum, which is free, and in most cases, you're leveraging existing infrastructure that's already in the field, that's already operational, okay? So there are Wi-Fi routers in residential environments. There's Wi-Fi coverage in a variety of business areas, okay, public, highly trafficked public areas. The list goes on and on. Those hotspots can be leveraged to provide services that are traditionally being provided by the cellular operators, namely voice and text services. Data has already been being used over Wi-Fi. We're talking about more pervasive use of data now, where it really starts to cut into the monetization model for these cellular operators. So let's talk about that monetization. For the traditional model, cellular operators are monetizing the traffic going over their pipes, okay? In the alternative model, the Wi-Fi model, there's different business models, ways to monetize this. One is selling content over the access, providing the access for free, but then providing the content and monetizing it that way. Retailers will provide Wi-Fi in their stores to bring people in, keep them there, and they're indirectly driving more sales within their stores by doing this, by providing this environment. There's also a variety of advertising models here. Google is playing very big here, giving away Wi-Fi access for free and then monetizing it on the back end by selling more advertisements online. And then in some cases you have Wi-Fi first operators monetizing cellular. So what they do is they say, hey, if you're in a Wi-Fi zone, you can use that service for free. You can use our software layer that provides that seamless handover and does all the coordination, authentication for you, that back-end software layer. You can use that, and then we're going to monetize and mark up the cellular for whenever you happen to be outside of a Wi-Fi zone. Then you can pay for that cellular usage. But you're really only paying for what you're using there, and you're not using a whole lot. So from a raw dollar perspective, how much you're spending there, it's drastically lower than what you'd be paying on a cellular-only plan. And we'll look at some of those economics later in subsequent slides. Back to the traditional model, optimized and seamless user experience. Okay, cellular's got this, it has this optimized. So there's seamless handover, it's a secure line, the incidence of dropped calls has drastically gone down over the years, quality of calling has gone up. So this is very good for the cellular model. However, on the alternative model, we're seeing monumental changes, improvements taking place in Wi-Fi, improvements in handover, in coordination, in seamless authentication, in security. Taken together, the Wi-Fi service is becoming good enough in comparison to cellular. People would be willing to forego cellular and use Wi-Fi now. We're seeing this in customer studies. This is hugely disruptive, and it's bad news for the cellular model. Outdoor coverage is pervasive for cellular. Indoor coverage is challenged for the traditional model. For Wi-Fi, it's the other way around. Indoor coverage is pervasive. Outdoor coverage has big gaps. Now, let me come back to that point about 75% of traffic, mobile traffic, being generated indoors. Okay, that means 25% is being generated outdoors. That's a big deal, because that's basically saying that you can use your Wi-Fi indoors, where you're probably going to have better coverage than cellular anyway, because the airwaves don't penetrate the buildings as well from the tower. This has big implications for the cellular model. And then for the traditional model, optimized traffic management. So coming back to this optimized and seamless user experience, lower incidence of dropped calls, all of these things feature prominently and are good news for cellular. However, for Wi-Fi, these improvements on the back end in the software layer, we're going to start seeing big improvements here. Wi-Fi is going to become good enough compared to cellular. So taken together, what does this mean? It means Wi-Fi is the lowest cost, highest impact way to deliver this wireless connectivity. Okay, so let's look at some of the economics of Wi-Fi versus cellular. I want to drive these points across on how disruptive this is, how drastically different this business model is. So this first chart is spectrum cost comparison. So what we have here is the amount of money that was raised in the AWS-3 spectrum auction. This occurred a few months ago in the United States. $44.9 billion was spent on just the spectrum. Okay, that's not including all of the infrastructure that's going to need to be spent on, owned and operated by the operators as they build into those spectrum, that frequency band. Okay, Wi-Fi, free. Okay, how do you compete with that type of a drastically different business model? Spectrum costs have been increasing relentlessly also. Okay, something's got to give here, because the operators are going to increasingly struggle to monetize those assets, not only the acquisition of the spectrum, how much it costs to acquire that spectrum, but also how they monetize the actual business behind that, the investment in CapEx for the infrastructure build-out, and then for the operations and maintenance portion of the business. These are huge costs for an operator, and the economics are just drastically different between the cellular model and the Wi-Fi model. Then if we look at the infrastructure portion, if we look in 2014, how much was spent on RAN for cellular networks versus Wi-Fi, and specifically that's carrier Wi-Fi. Okay, that's not including, that $600 million does not include the routers in residential. It does not include wireless LAN purchased by enterprise. That's pure carrier Wi-Fi spend. But if you look at the discrepancy there, it is huge, okay? The cost per bit of delivering the traffic over a cellular-based network versus a Wi-Fi-based network is drastically different, okay? Now let's look at the plans. So because the economics are so drastically different between cellular and Wi-Fi, the Wi-Fi operators are able to charge much less for their services, okay, and still get a reasonable margin. So what we have here is an ARPU comparison. In the first bar, we have Tier 1 U.S. cellular operators, okay? So this is average revenue per user. This is the average of the big four in the U.S., so Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, and T-Mobile. On average, for an individual subscriber, they're paying almost $60 a month for cellular service. Cablevision, who came out with a service called Freewheel earlier this year, which is a Wi-Fi only service, charges almost $30 a month for a non-current subscriber to their internet services. Okay, so this is a customer who is not a previous Cablevision customer who decides, hey, I want to use their Wi-Fi only service for my communication needs. $30 a month. That's half of what you're going to get from a Tier 1 cellular operator. Let's take it a step further. Republic Wireless is a Wi-Fi first operator, okay? So they offer Wi-Fi service for free. You have to download their application. You have to use their device with their native client on it, with their Wi-Fi calling application. And you purchase buckets of data, minutes, and text from their MVNO partner, who happens to be Sprint. So their average revenue per user, and they quote this on their website, is almost $15 a month. And they'll actually rebate back to you any data that you don't use from their MVNO partner during the month. So you can buy a bucket of data, a la Sprint. If you only use half that data bucket, Republic Wireless will reimburse you for the portion of that bucket that you did not use. This is hugely disruptive. The telecom carriers don't do this. T-Mobile's getting there, but they're not there yet. But this is big, big disruption. Let's take it another step further. Cablevision internet subscribers. So if you are an existing subscriber to their broadband service, you can add on Wi-Fi only service for $10 a month. Okay, that's a fifth of the cost, a sixth of the cost of the Tier 1 U.S. cellular operator. Let's take it one more step further, because we can't go any further than this next company, Scratch Wireless. It's free. They're a Wi-Fi only service company. It's free. The way they make money is through the devices that they sell. So they will sell the smartphone to you, and they make a little bit of money off selling the device to the subscriber. They're doing this right now. They're being very aggressive with this because they're trying to scale up quickly. They're right now at the order of magnitude of hundreds of thousands of subscribers. They're going to start getting into the millions probably in the next 2 years. They're going to start breaking through and getting some very big momentum here. They're still relatively unknown in the space, but they are making quite a buzz in the market, and they're getting some traction. They've been quoted in some major trade publications, in some popular media. They're making a big splash in the marketplace. Someone to watch out for. How do you compete with free? That's a real challenging thing to contemplate. So I've done the math out here, annual plan cost. So I basically multiplied that ARPU by 12 months in a year, and then the annual cost savings over cellular. And you can see there, essentially you're saving up to over $700 a month for an individual user. That will make people strongly consider switching over from cellular to Wi-Fi. They'll start making those decisions, and we're already starting to see some of the early adopters taking the plunge and going all in with Wi-Fi. So the market's evolving rapidly here. The ecosystem is building out, it's developing, it's establishing itself. There's a lot of startups coming online here There is incumbent activity trying to get out ahead of this trend. Let's talk about some of the big things that are taking place, that have taken place recently. Starting with the Cable Wi-Fi Alliance. So the Cable Wi-Fi Alliance was started in May 2012, and it includes 5 of the top 6 cable operators in the United States, namely Comcast, Time Warner Cable, Cox Communications, Cablevision, and Bright House Networks. They all got together and said, hey, we're building out Wi-Fi networks individually. Why don't we get together and blend those hotspots that we're putting out in the field together so that we can provide even more value to our existing subscribers, to our broadband subscribers. They've deployed over 400,000 Wi-Fi hotspots across the country since May 2012. That's a big number. They are covering shopping districts, cafes, malls, sports arenas, concert arenas, restaurants, parks, beaches. It's mostly in urban areas, but they are starting to put more and more hotspots in the fringes of the urban core, and even in some suburban markets. Basically what happens is, if you are an existing subscriber to their broadband service, you get free access to the Cable Wi-Fi Alliance footprint. So anywhere you are in a hotspot of this alliance, you get free Wi-Fi service. That's disruptive. And they're building out at a rate of about 50,000 hotspots every 6 months. That pace has accelerated a little bit, but that's about the pace that they're deploying hotspots, and they're working with a variety of vendors to get them out even faster. The second big development here to focus on is Freewheel. Now, I had mentioned Freewheel previously. This is Cablevision's Wi-Fi only service. They came out with this in February 2015. They are the first cable operator to come out with a Wi-Fi calling service. And they're offering unlimited free voice, text, and data through this offering. We're expecting Comcast to follow suit. I think that they have been in preparation mode for some time now. They are going to make a market announcement, I think, in the next year or two, come out with their own Wi-Fi-oriented calling service. Some of the things that they've been doing is deploying dual gateway SSID routers in their residential, wherever they have residential points of presence. And they've deployed about 10 million of those dual gateway routers to date. What is the dual gateway router? Essentially what it is it sends out 2 signals. The first signal is for the private use for that residential household, whoever is purchasing the service. The second signal, the second gateway within that router, is for public use. So it's beaming out a signal for anybody who happens to be within the Cable Wi-Fi Alliance or a Comcast subscriber. They can get access to that zone. Okay, so it's basically turning individual residential points of presence into hotspots for public use. Hugely disruptive. Number 4, Wi-Fi first and cellular model. So Republic Wireless and others are eliminating the coverage gap, which is one of the shortcomings of Wi-Fi, by using cellular only where necessary. So what they're doing is partnering with a cellular operator. Sprint is a big MVNO here for Wi-Fi operators, by the way, Sprint and T-Mobile. And the majority of the traffic is flowing through the Wi-Fi network. About 75% is what Republic Wireless says is flowing through the Wi-Fi network. They're monetizing that other 25%, and that's their business model. They sell a markup. They sell marked up buckets of voice, text, and data, and that's how they're monetizing. That's the basis of their business model. Think of it as a loss leader. Give away the Wi-Fi for free, monetize indirectly by selling the cellular, and that gives the subscribers to that service peace of mind knowing that they're going to have ubiquitous coverage wherever they are, even if they're not in a Wi-Fi coverage zone. Number 5 is a relatively new development. Google has this subsidiary called Sidewalk Labs, and essentially it's kind of like a startup. What they're focused on doing is solving urban issues and solving technology issues, using technology to improve the urban lifestyle. And one of the things that they're focusing on is converting old telephone booths in New York City into Wi-Fi hotspots and charging stations. So essentially what they want to do is there's about 10,000 phone booths where you have paid telephones still in Manhattan. They want to take control of those phone booths. They want to affix a Wi-Fi hotspot into those phone booths, so essentially creating Wi-Fi hotspots for public use, okay? And then they also want to offer charging stations for people who want to come and charge their devices. Google's going to monetize these by selling advertising, not only online advertising, but also billboard advertising. They're going to put billboards on the phone booths, in and around them, and stream advertisements from those. So this is where you're looking at the business model of advertising and as a way of monetizing the Wi-Fi access. And then last but not least here, telecom Wi-Fi. The telecom operators, some of them do invest in their own Wi-Fi. It's a love-hate relationship with Wi-Fi. We'll talk more about this later in the presentation, but essentially what's happening is the operators like Wi-Fi because it gives them indoor coverage, and so it addresses the indoor coverage gap of cellular, and it also helps them offload and ease some of the burden of data traffic coming onto the cellular network. So it's a low-cost way for them to offload that traffic, and there's usually already backhaul built in because the Wi-Fi is using an Ethernet line. So that's the line that's backhauling the traffic through the network instead of using fiber at the tower or microwave backhaul. And some operators are even offering their own Wi-Fi calling services now, like T-Mobile. And part of the reason T-Mobile did this as part of their Un-carrier strategy is so that they can essentially automatically boost the coverage and improve the call coverage for their cellular customers. We expect more operators like Sprint to follow suit with that type of a model. Okay, so Wi-Fi is great, right? Lots going for it. Yeah, there is a lot going for it, but there's also some shortcomings, and I think it's important to address these. These are some of the issues that the industry is going to have to overcome in order for you to see tens of millions of subscribers in the United States start to migrate onto Wi-Fi only plans or Wi-Fi first type plans. So the first and foremost is limited device selection. If you look at companies like Republic Wireless, Google, Google Fi, and Scratch Wireless, you'll notice that they only offer a few devices. So very limited device selection. Part of the reason is they have their software tightly integrated into the devices, so that when you take it out, it's basically plug and play. You turn on the device and you're automatically starting to draw off the Wi-Fi network. And you're doing the calling, the texting, and the data all through that network from day one. What I expect to happen, and we're already starting to see it in the market, is over-the-top applications where a subscriber can download a Wi-Fi calling type application onto their phone, and they can automatically start using then Wi-Fi calling services. They could use it from any carrier. So it would be an agnostic type tie-up here. Then you're going to see real traction in the market. Right now, the limited device selection is a big hindrance because people want to be able to use their iPhones, the smartphone Galaxies, which are some of the most popular devices in the world. Those are the ones that they really want to start using on these Wi-Fi calling type services. We're not there yet, but we're getting close. Coverage gaps. So indoor is well covered by Wi-Fi, outdoor is not. So anybody who has a Wi-Fi only plan, that's a big limiting factor. It decreases the mobility that you have of using your phone when you want to, where you want to. So how are operators addressing this? You have the Wi-Fi first type model where you can use cellular only where necessary. What we also have happening is operators deploying more access points. So the cable operators are doing this in particular with the Cable Wi-Fi Alliance. Google's also doing this with the Sidewalk Labs investments. So there are different models, different ways of thinking about this, and different ways of providing coverage occurring. There's also talk, some more radical ideas have been to turn individual cars into hotspots, to turn light posts into hotspots. There's a variety of different models being entertained in the industry, but we've addressed some of the ones that are actually being built into. Handover is another limiting factor. There needs to be seamless coordination, and that's currently not optimized. Hotspot 2.0 and some of the other standards that are coming out here, some of the new evolutions of Wi-Fi technology are aiming to address the handover and the seamless authentication issues. We are seeing monumental improvements taking place here, and it's becoming almost as good as cellular. Quality also needs to be addressed. There is still quite a bit of dropped calls. There's not the great seamless handover. It's not optimized yet. That needs to be addressed. And then security needs to improve. The security on Wi-Fi networks is not as strong as it is on cellular. That needs to be addressed. The standards agencies, and there's other stakeholders here that are addressing that, taking that issue on head on. So I also want to point out that it's not all doom and gloom for cellular operators. And Wi-Fi, actually cellular, will still have a key role to play even in a Wi-Fi dominated world. Where is cellular going to be important? Well, cellular will be the de facto fallback to Wi-Fi. So it is more cost effective to provide coverage in rural and suburban markets using cellular than it is Wi-Fi. So really what we're talking about with Wi-Fi is urban and some suburban markets where there's some clustering of neighborhoods, where there's it's dense suburban areas. There Wi-Fi is more suitable than cellular, and we're going to see big migrations toward Wi-Fi in those areas. We will see cellular, we'll see more MVNO activity with on the wholesale end, so we're going to see more wholesale subscribers tapping into that cellular network only when they're not in a Wi-Fi coverage zone. Mission critical use cases, so enterprise customers that have a high degree for security, for high level of quality, they are going to want to use cellular. They're okay paying more money for that. That's fine with them, and this is a key business for the cellular operators. This is an area where they can drive good margin and get some scale. They're already addressing these markets and applications that are being used over these markets. M2M is a big one. Cloud is another big one. These are areas where the cellular operators can drive value and monetize their cellular networks. Connected car and medical devices are two other segments of that market where the cellular operators can still monetize their networks. So it's a love-hate relationship with Wi-Fi that cellular operators have. On the one hand, Wi-Fi poses a significant threat to the traditional cellular business model, but it's also helping these cellular operators reduce the cost per bit, and it's enhancing their indoor coverage where cellular doesn't penetrate well. So we're going to see this love-hate relationship, this symbiotic relationship evolve over time with the cellular operators. So implications for incumbent telecom operators. There is a big pool of subscribers, especially on the consumer end of the market, that would be willing to transition to a Wi-Fi type service, especially as those services get much better and become as good as cellular. What are the implications here for cellular operators on a net basis? If we boil everything down, what does this look like? What does the picture look like for a traditional telecom operator? Revenue is going to decline. Subscribers are going to defect to Wi-Fi plans. Cash flow is going to decline because ARPUs will be in a race to the bottom as operators try to stem subscriber losses. So we're already seeing a price war in the cellular world with T-Mobile driving down ARPUs. Now we're going to see companies who are offering much lower Wi-Fi services here, as low as free, and that's going to have a downward pressure on cash flows for the traditional operators. How to respond. Operators are going to have to bring new revenue streams to market to offset this cannibalization of their access business. So here wraps in the whole idea of monetizing cloud services, monetizing M2M, monetizing these enterprise applications. These are areas where operators can retain value for their customers and still drive good margin and growth here. But taken together, access is going to become commoditized, and it's going to become a sunk cost. The real value is going to lie in value-added services, and there will be some room for a premium provider. There are going to be some subscribers that they won't care that Wi-Fi might be on par with cellular. They're going to want to stick with what they have because they're used to it. They don't want to switch it up, and they're comfortable with their current level of service and how much they're paying for it. Verizon and AT&T are primarily going to be the ones to retain these types of subscribers just due to the high level of network quality that they have in their systems. So recommendations for incumbent telecom operators. We feel operators should leverage Wi-Fi to enhance their businesses while focusing on building revenue-generating businesses. So things like prioritizing network analytics to monetize cellular. If you can leverage the vast troves of data that the cellular operators have on their subscribers to better monetize them or to better operate their networks at lower cost, use those insights. Use those insights to drive revenue or to reduce your cost base. Continue leveraging Wi-Fi to enhance indoor coverage, focus on selling premium service, but improve indoor coverage. That's a big one. The cellular guys, especially ones that operate on high band spectrum, which doesn't penetrate concrete as well, or structures in general, it could be wood structures or whatever, those are the ones that really should focus on leveraging Wi-Fi in a much bigger way than they currently are. T-Mobile's doing this. They can do more there. Sprint needs to step up here. They need to do more here. It's important. The Sprint's losing a lot of subscribers because their coverage is not up to par with the other carriers, the other tier ones. If they embrace Wi-Fi, this is a big way that they can address some of that coverage issues that they have. Promote network quality to retain subscribers. Again, this is primarily AT&T, Verizon here. Sprint and T-Mobile can get good gains here as well, improving network coverage if they leverage this Wi-Fi. And then outsourcing network operations to reduce OpEx, stave off margin erosion. Operators do this a lot in Europe, in emerging markets. In the U.S., outsourcing network operations is not a big thing. Part of the reason is because unions prevent this from happening. Other reasons is operators prefer to have more control over their infrastructure. There is cost savings to be had from outsourcing to a vendor, and I would encourage some operators to strongly consider doing outsourcing because you can get some good margin protection here and boost profitability from implementing outsourced network operations type contracts. So that's a little bit about the operators. What about the vendors? What are the implications for the network vendors? There's a lot of money being spent on cellular infrastructure. There's a lot of money being spent on operating and maintaining that infrastructure. What happens when some of those revenue pools dry up? Who's at high risk? Who's at low risk here? There's going to be a balance of power shift. Vendors that are, their core business revolves around supporting cellular operators, they're at high risk. Whereas operators or vendors that are already in Wi-Fi or are segueing very quickly into Wi-Fi have a lower risk and a bigger opportunity here as the market shifts. So some of the guys that are threatened here, Alcatel-Lucent, Nokia Networks, Ericsson, Huawei, ZTE, and Samsung. if you look at the businesses of those vendors, it's very highly correlated with spend on CapEx for cellular technologies. If that starts to dry up, they're in trouble. Whereas for the low-risk vendors, where Wi-Fi is an opportunity here, is a net opportunity. You have Cisco, who happens to be the dominant Wi-Fi infrastructure supplier in the world. They're the dominant one. HP, who just bought Aruba, Ruckus Wireless, Motorola Solutions, Pace. Those two companies are more on the residential routing end of the business, the set-top box type end of the business, supporting the cable operators. But they're a benefitter here. Aerohive Networks, Aptillo Networks, and then there's a whole list of other Wi-Fi vendors, both established ones and startups that are coming into the market. This ecosystem is rapidly evolving. Now, the high-risk companies are starting to adapt here. Alcatel-Lucent is making investments in voice-over Wi-Fi technologies, working on helping traditional operators converge, have better convergence, have better quality of service by merging together the cellular realm with the Wi-Fi realm. There's technologies like LTE unlicensed coming out. There's a lot of chatter about those things. So the high-risk companies are wading into this space, becoming more focused on Wi-Fi. But if you look at the raw dollars, if you look at how much money is up for grabs here and that is potentially at risk, this is a big problem for these companies. So recommendations for the vendor community. Those vendors that can provide converged Wi-Fi cellular solutions to their customers while adapting their businesses to be more services-oriented are best positioned to offset this disruption. So this includes building up a value-added services portfolio to help operators identify and implement new revenue-generating businesses. So M2M, mobile commerce, cloud, how do you monetize the cloud? A lot of this wraps in enterprise customers. This is a key area vendors need to help in a much bigger way the operators. Promoting these converged technologies like LTE LAA, which is licensed assisted access, also called LTE unlicensed. These types of technologies, leveraging Wi-Fi spectrum to improve cellular coverage and quality, improving voice quality, improving security, improving handover and coordination, so more of the software layer on the back end. All of these areas are places where traditional vendors can help their traditional customers drive value here and leverage Wi-Fi in a much bigger way. And then from an internal perspective for these vendors, they need to accelerate the downsizing of the old business, make room for the new. So there's a lot of spend taking place from an R&D perspective, from a resourcing perspective for supporting the cellular business. That needs to transition more toward a Wi-Fi dominated world. And this will help the vendors right-size their operations, protect margins, help them be more nimble in the market and respond to changes that are happening on the Wi-Fi end of the business. Okay, so wrapping up, and we'll leave some time for questions here. Wi-Fi is already here. It is pervasive. It is hugely disruptive to cellular. The market is evolving. The ecosystem is vibrant. It's dynamic. There's a lot going on here. There's a lot of money coming into this space. There's going to be a lot of disruption. We have not seen real disruption here yet, but over the next 5 years, there's going to be a lot of disruption here. And this has implications for all of the stakeholders involved. Now, with that said, cellular will still have a role to play in a Wi-Fi dominated world, but operators need to adapt. Vendors need to adapt too. They need to transition with their customers to this Wi-Fi centric world. So Again, my name is Chris Antlitz, Senior Analyst in the Telecom practice here at TBR. Hope you enjoyed this presentation. We're going to open it up for Q&A now.
All right, so if you have any questions, please send them to the Q&A function, and let's begin. So the first question, you focused a lot on what is happening in the U.S. I'm curious what you're seeing outside the U.S. in the Wi-Fi space.
Yeah, so this presentation did focus on the United States. Again, we did that because it seems to be the most dynamic Wi-Fi market in the world. With that said, though, there is quite a bit going on in Wi-Fi elsewhere in the world. I'll focus on Europe specifically, Europe and China. So Europe has quite a large install base of Wi-Fi already endemic, especially in Western Europe and in most of Central and Eastern Europe. We are starting to see startups disrupting that market, but it's not, the ecosystem's not as vibrant. It's not evolving the way that we're seeing the United States market evolving, but they are playing catch up there in Europe. And then China is building out Wi-Fi at a huge pace. The incumbent operators are investing quite a bit into building out hotspots. There's residential Wi-Fi going out into the field. So there is quite a bit of coverage already in the cities, not only the Tier 1 cities in China, but also the Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities in China. So we're going to see more coming out in China there. There's ripe for disruption there.
All right, next question. How many current cellular subscribers do you realistically think will defect to the Wi-Fi plans?
Okay, so as of right now, there are some industry estimates about how many people are right now using either a Wi-Fi first or a Wi-Fi only plan. It's in the order of a couple million to several million. The real question is, when do we break the 10 million threshold? When do we get into the tens of millions of consumers migrating to Wi-Fi plans instead of cellular? So talking about cannibalization here, I think we're about 5 years out from that. I think when Comcast comes out with their Wi-Fi service, you're going to see a big splash in that market, and you're going to start to see some real churn taking place from the cellular operators, people coming over to this Comcast. Comcast has tens of millions of subscribers on their pay TV and broadband services across the country. If they can convert a fifth of those people, that's 10 million subscribers right there. And I think if using Cablevision's pricing as a gauge to what Comcast might do, I think that's going to be hugely disruptive, and that's going to really push this market in a big way. The other thing to keep in mind is that the device OEMs are pushing this industry as well. They want to see this happen because they're going to sell more devices. We're seeing Apple is moving here. They have been putting in Wi-Fi calling capabilities in their new iPhone series, and they're making it very seamless to work with Wi-Fi for calling and texting and the data. They're improving that technology on the back end. So it's going to be a good user experience on an iPhone. Good signaling, good security, good handover. This is disruptive. You're going to make consumers say, hey, this is great, and I can spend a fraction of the cost that I'm currently paying, and I can get really good quality of service here. They're going to be high propensity to defect to a Wi-Fi type plan.
All right. What do you think is Google's Wi-Fi strategy?
Yeah, so Google they've been doing a lot of things in Wi-Fi. There doesn't seem to be a cohesive strategy, but if we take a step back, and I'm going to come back to what we were talking about in the Alternative Network Providers webinar I did a couple months ago. And if you haven't seen that, I strongly encourage you to watch that. It is on SlideShare. What Google wants to do is get Internet access to be ubiquitous. They want to make sure that every person on this planet has access to the Internet. in a low-cost way. Wi-Fi, they understand the power of Wi-Fi, and they are a key contributor to Wi-Fi standards. They are investing in startups. They're building out their own Wi-Fi businesses. They're doing quite a bit in this ecosystem. And the point is, they want to give away the access for free or very close to free, and they're going to monetize this by selling more advertisements. The premise is this. If you can have people, end users, on more connected to their devices with faster speeds, and they're not worried about using up their data buckets or paying more for their data and everything else. So they want to have people using their devices more for more time, and they want their end users to be able to cycle through web pages faster. Both of those taken together means that they are monetizing their online advertising platform in a much bigger way. They're basically building up their addressable market, their existing addressable market. They're better monetizing their existing addressable market by providing that connectivity environment. It's genius, and it's a radically different business model from what the traditional guys are doing. So long story short, Google, they are behind the scenes and they're in your face on what they're doing with Wi-Fi and a variety of other things that they're doing in the connectivity realm with their Google Fiber initiative. They're doing other things with Google Fi, having their own service there, using MVNOs to provide services. They are very well involved in this market.
All right. Next question. What are the speeds from the current Wi-Fi providers?
So speeds vary. Same with cellular. It varies. It depends on a variety of variables, such as, but not limited to, the proximity you are from the hotspot, how many people are feeding off of the hotspot, the quality of the hotspot hardware itself, the quality of the device, the application, how optimized it is in the network. There's a variety of things that it's very difficult to say how fast paint a broad brush here. But generally speaking, the speeds on Wi-Fi are comparable to, if not faster than, what people are getting on an LTE network.
All right. Does Wi-Fi use IMS for its core signal plane?
It can. In many cases it does, especially for companies that are trying to blend Wi-Fi. So for instance, T-Mobile, Wi-Fi calling, okay? They have the cellular network, but then they also have their Wi-Fi calling platform. Those platforms need to talk and play nicely with each other. So yes, on the back end, they're using IMS there to enable that and make sure that it's seamless. So yes, that the IMS does play a key role on the back end infrastructure.
All right. How can CIOs plan for this disruption on a global basis? So how to stay ahead, how to manage investments, both interim and long term. Okay.
So I'm going to take this from two perspectives. First, let's talk about CIOs in the operator, and then I'm going to talk about CIOs from an enterprise perspective. So CIOs from an operator perspective, I think that they need to be more aggressive on evolving the business model. The subscription model, the traditional cellular model is changing. They need to focus more on how do we service our enterprise customers, how do we drive value for them, how do we integrate and leverage Wi-Fi technologies in the network to improve their existing coverage, the quality of the network, and reduce their cost base. So how do we leverage Wi-Fi for more offload? How do we optimize that to push down the cost structure? And how do we coexist with Wi-Fi? Those are key questions that they need to be focusing on And then from a enterprise perspective, this is good news for enterprise. As Wi-Fi gets more, as it becomes on par with cellular in terms of quality and security, most enterprise already have Wi-Fi in their offices, okay? So in their headquarters, in branch offices, there's already Wi-Fi in those places in most cases. So basically what you're saying to an enterprise CIO is, hey, we can save a lot of money here. We can transition maybe to a Wi-Fi first type plan so that our employees have ubiquitous coverage wherever they may be, but we can also leverage our existing Wi-Fi infrastructure to reduce how much money we're spending with our cellular provider. And this is going to help them save money over the long term.
All right, all right. Final two questions here. Who are the leading providers to push Wi-Fi?
So I'll take this from two perspectives. First, from the traditional incumbent telecom operator perspective, and then from the everybody else perspective. So traditional telecom operators, I think we're seeing T-Mobile and Sprint being aggressive here because they have to be, because they need to improve their coverage and the quality of their network compared to AT&T and Verizon. And by leveraging Wi-Fi, they can do that in a relatively low-cost way without cannibalizing their business in a big way, at least in the short to near term. From a everybody else perspective, so from a Wi-Fi operator perspective, we have a lot of leasing going on. So there's two camps here. One camp is Wi-Fi operators that own the software layer. So their claim to fame is offering an optimized and cohesively put together platform where they are offering their own security, they are offering their own coordination, handover, authentication, policy type software, so that from the consumer who's using that service, they have a good user experience and they have it's a tightly integrated model. They're offering the software layer there, and then you have the operators that are owning and controlling the infrastructure like the cable operators are doing with the Cable Wi-Fi Alliance, and in the residential, those guys are pushing the actual build-out of the hotspots. That's where you're seeing the big dollars going into, the Comcasts of the world, the Cablevisions, the Time Warner cables. And then you have Google, who's doing a variety of each. They are doing a lot of leasing. They're also building out their own Wi-Fi hotspots, as we see with the Sidewalk Labs, what they're trying to do there.
All right, and our final question, will virtualization, NFV, enhance operator adoption of Wi-Fi plus cellular?
I think it's going to make it lower cost. It's going to make it more feasible. It's going to make it more, I mean, NFV, it's really, it's really about saving money from a CapEx and OpEx perspective. So you're spending less on the infrastructure you're putting in the field. You get some cost savings there because you're using commoditized hardware, essentially. And in some cases, you're using open source software. So that reduces the cost of infrastructure deployment. So that's a net positive. And then on the OpEx perspective, you're centralizing the intelligence of the network in controller boxes and in the data center, which is provisioning these virtualized functions. So it's really just streamlining the cost structure of delivering the service. So at the end of the day, it's helping reduce the cost burden of deploying access technology. So on a net basis, it's good for the entire ecosystem, not only for the incumbent telecom operators, but also for the Wi-Fi only operators.
All right, well, that's all we have time for today and all the questions. So thank you, Chris, and thank you, everyone, for your questions. You can follow Chris as well as TVR on Twitter at the handles listed here, and please check out our pages on SlideShare and YouTube as well. Just a reminder, we will be sending out the link from today's recording as well as these slides to everyone who attended today's webinar tomorrow afternoon. Additionally, before you sign off, I'd like to ask you to take a very brief survey on today's webinar. We're always looking to improve our information and how we are able to share it with you. Otherwise, thank you for joining and have a great afternoon.